Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying.
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, July 18th. LA Galaxy 2-0 losers to the Colorado Rapids in Colorado. We're going to talk about that game. God only knows why, but we will. The losses keep racking up for the Galaxy, so a lot to get to. Is this team as bad as we think they are? Are they as good as some of the games that they've been playing? We're going to try to answer those questions, or at least discuss those questions as we go forward here. And of course, the Galaxy getting ready to take on Atlanta United. Gaston Brugman set to be introduced to everybody on Wednesday as well. So a lot of stuff to talk about this week, even with no midweek game, a lot to get to. To help me tonight, the Pandem himself is off in Mexico covering USA and Canada, the women's game happening right now as we're recording. But we are so lucky and privileged to have my best friend in the press box, mostly because he sits really far away from me, so we don't have to hang out all the time. It's Mr. Damian Calhoun from the LA Daily News and the SoCal News Group. Damian, how's it going, buddy?
Doing all right. You?
Glad to have you. I know we talk all the time, but I don't know if have you been on the show before? I was trying to think before we. I swear you've been like maybe once or twice.
I think maybe my first year on the beat, I had a call-in segment, I think.
Oh yeah, I think so. It was like the old school from the box way back in the day.
So back in 2016.
Yeah, probably. That sounds about right, before we sort of changed up the formats and stuff. Well, Damian is, and I know everybody knows who you are. I talk about you constantly on the show. I'm actually surprised we haven't had you on the show. But Damian is one of the absolute best beat reporters for the LA Galaxy. He's there all the time. He's there more than I am. He's usually the guy who gets the first question on the calls, except whenever Kevin is running them, and then I get it because Kevin likes me better than you. And so Damian does a great job. So please, if you can, follow him on Twitter. We'll give you all that information to do if you're not already. But Damian, you were also in COVID jail. Congratulations. I've recently come out of COVID jail, so I know the feeling. You feeling okay?
Yeah, feeling a lot better. My time is almost up here. Got a couple more days. I'm ready to bust out of here, to be honest with
you. Yeah, I know the feeling 100%. So very good. All right. Unfortunately for you, then, you did have plenty of time to watch the LA Galaxy play the Colorado Rapids on Saturday night. 2-0 loss for the LA Galaxy. I don't know. At this point, there's nobody who can be surprised that the LA Galaxy lose games on a regular basis, especially to struggling teams. I think Colorado was 13th in the conference at the time that they faced off against the Galaxy. And you get 2 goals from Colorado, one in the first half. Really should have been 2 in the first half, almost back-to-back again. And then you get a 75th minute goal from Giassi Zardes on that backside. So former LA Galaxy player coming in to hurt the LA Galaxy, which is normally the case. Not surprising at all. And it now stretches, Damian, the LA Galaxy's winless streak against Colorado to 8. The last time they won was in 2017. We talked about that. Jack McBean had, I think, 2 goals in that game. That's how long ago that was. So, I mean, general thoughts before we dive into any of the details. Your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, when I heard about that stat, I'm still sort of shocked. It's been that long since they beat the Rapids. But yeah, it was one of those games where, like you said, it should have been 2-0 early in the first half. Or I don't know how early it was, but maybe midway had 1 goal chalked off there for offside. Greg always says that they get into these positions, and when they get there, they just forget to do what to do when they get there, which is a running theme, a running problem so far. I mean, they had a lot of chances, not really chances, but they get into these like good attacks. You're thinking, okay, here comes a 3-on-1, here comes a 4-on-2, whatever, 2 wingers, whatever, and the ball just sort of dies, gets scuffed away there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 19 games in, 20 games in, there's still a puzzle about this team.
It feels that way. It feels like this team, and I'm of this belief, and I know this is very much, splitting the baby whenever it comes to it, but it's like I've seen this team play really, really good soccer. And you can say, and somebody in our Discord sort of said, well, maybe we're the team, speaking about the LA Galaxy, this person says, maybe we're the team that other teams play down to. Right? Like maybe that's the thing. And I said, yes, maybe, but we're also talking about some of the best teams in the league that the LA Galaxy have handled pretty soundly. And even in the loss back to LAFC, at no point did it look like the LA Galaxy were a bottom or meddling team whenever they're at Bank of California Stadium playing against, LAFC. And the score ends up being 3-2. It was a competitive game. The Galaxy had chances to tie that game and maybe even score and win that game. And it didn't happen. But then you go into a San Jose game, which ends 3-2 as well after the Galaxy give up 3 goals in the first half. You come in and you say, okay, there's going to be a reaction. And what's the reaction going to be? And instead, what we see is, I think, a lackadaisical performance. I don't think there was ever sort of any edge to the LA Galaxy. I don't know that the lineup and the personnel necessarily suited what Greg was trying to do, and understanding that there's some shorthanded tendencies within this group right now to not necessarily have the best 11 on the field. And are there 11 good players is maybe another good question as well. I mean, these are all of the sort of things that we're doing. By the way, you already have a fan in our chat room. Raphael gave us a $10 super chat, says, Josh, thanks for having Damian on tonight. His Twitter account is one of my go-to sources for G's and local sports coverage. Mine too, Raphael. So I appreciate that. Thanks for the super chat. But when we look at this game, we look at Colorado. I think that Robin Fraser had him set up well, Damian. It's just, again, there did not seem to be any sort of edge in this game where the LA Galaxy looked at any major points of being the better team.
Yeah, we've seen that more than once, and it's like, I mean, if it was easy, a simple why would be, hey. I mean, it'll be simple, right?
Right.
I guess there's no simple answer, but yeah, they didn't do anything in particular. They got the ball to Lewis, direct, and he play balls over, play balls across, and I mean, I think it was inside the first 5 minutes, Derrick Williams had to make a diving save,
right,
on a goal line.
Yep,
and that sort of set the tone there.
Yeah, no, it does, and already the Galaxy under pressure. If you look at the starting lineup, and by the way, this is not in any way a 2-forward setup in my mind, but everybody to each their own, however they want to put these pieces together. But if you look at this, it was Jonathan Bond in goal. They had Chase Gasper at left back, which is a little bit of a surprise, moved Raheem Edwards into the left mid role. And I know lots of people talked about Edwards playing more of that wing back in this position and being able to come back on defense more to sort of cover Chase Gasper. That didn't happen in this game. I saw Edwards as a pure left midfielder for most of this game until he was pulled out of it. Julian Narajo on the right-hand side, Nick DePuy in the center. So Sega Coulibaly now, Nick DePuy sort of going back and forth between who starts and how they're going. Greg's still trying to mix and match that. I don't know if Sega has any injuries that have sort of reoccurred, but since he's come back from injury, has not been a consistent starter. So that's something to sort of watch there. You had Kleshton and Raveloson as your sort of two midfielders there. Efrain Alvarez was in the midfield as more of a 10 role, and then Kevin Cabral was out on the right-hand side, so the opposite of Raheem Edwards there, with Joveljic up top. Worth reminding everybody that you had Chicharito, who was out due to health and safety protocols, and Mark Delgado as well. Mark Delgado's probably the bigger miss on all of these. Just because he's the one who controls the midfield, Damian. He's the one who sort of controls that tempo. He usually does a really good job tracking back on defense. He's good on sort of that box-to-box guy. He has off games, and we've seen that. But at the same time, he's also one of the more consistent midfielders. And to not have him in this, and maybe to not have Chicharito as well. And the only reason I say that, not that Chicha is scoring a whole bunch of goals right now, it's just that there are a progression of subs that make the LA Galaxy more and more dangerous as they go. And whenever you start Joveljic and you don't have Chicharito and you don't have that ability, I feel like the LA Galaxy don't have the subs to sort of make this team more dangerous. You think that's fair?
Yeah, I think that's right. Joveljic, my sort of offensive subs are usually Joveljic, either Efra for Victor or Victor for Efra.
Right.
And then depending on who's starting, is it Douglas, is it Cabral, is it Granzier? Either one of those. If one of those didn't start, one of those are coming in maybe the 60th minute or whatever. But when they're all crammed into the lineup, you're looking around like, oh man, Preston Judd's the only attacking player left on the bench really, and it's like.
I was thinking maybe we were going to see some Judd. I
thought so too. Yeah.
I thought maybe that was the game for it, just because it, sort of putting that in. Listen, I'll say this, and there's a lot of questions, obviously, with Kevin Cabral and moving Kevin Cabral into any of these situations and giving him, large chances anymore on all this. If you're the LA Galaxy, you need Kevin Cabral to be good. I don't know that it's going to happen, but I'll also say that by leaving Kevin Cabral off the starting, I don't necessarily know that it hurts or it helps. Moving Grandsir in for Kevin Cabral, you sort of get the same but just a little different. There's not much in terms of offense that's created there. Efrain Alvarez right now and Victor Vasquez, you could flip a coin between those two. You're not going to get a whole bunch of production, I think, out of either of them. Although, that wasn't the case last year. Victor Vasquez was an important piece last year. I think that you're seeing the end of Victor Vasquez playing, and I think you're probably seeing the end of Sasha Kljestan playing, and Kljestan gets the start in this one, and you can understand, I think, why Greg wanted to do it. But again, it's a slow midfield. Ravelison's not real fast. Sasha's not the speediest. He'd be the first one to tell you. I'm not saying anything out of turn. So at this point, there's little things. Having said that, I can't come up with, you definitely should have played these guys or that guys. There's too many holes on this roster right now. You can't start Douglas Costa right now. He's not even 60 minutes fit, and at altitude, 45 minutes was probably as much as you were going to get out of him. Cabral and Grandsir, flip a coin. Don't care. Doesn't matter. You're probably going to get the same out of either of them. I know I know Cabral missed that's a couple sitters. Also, I know Dayon passed up a chance to put Cabral in, and didn't do it and ended up taking a bad shot. And I got a lot of crap for saying that Dayon needs to pass that ball. It doesn't matter if Cabral is going to miss it. That's still where the ball's supposed to go, and maybe he'll get it back. These are the types of things. I understand all the frustration, everything else that is sort of going on with this, Damian, but I can't sit here and say there's absolutely better players sitting on the bench, because there's not. I don't see it.
No, Greg said he said the other day he's looking for guys to be held accountable, held reliable, and if they don't get it done, somebody else will come in. So who are those guys coming in? Are we going to go? Is it Johnny Perez?
Right.
Going that far down the bench to get these guys in. I would do it, but they don't pay me to coach the team.
I wish they did sometimes. I think maybe they should let us just one game pick the lineup. Be like, hey, listen, this is what we're gonna go with, guys. All right, and then whenever it falls apart, we can be like, yeah, our bad.
Yeah. All the power would blame somebody else.
Yeah, listen, there are some pieces that I'm intrigued by. Daniel Aguirre is really a piece that I really like. I still feel like he needs a good partner in there in order to do it. And I don't think that necessarily that was this case in this game that sort of anchor him. He plays better probably whenever he sits next to Delgado. And Delgado makes other people better. That makes sense too. But I think it provides clarity on his role. So I like Aguirre. I think you can put him in there. For me, Grandsir over Cabral right now, sure. Okay. That's fine. Again, we get into some of the same arguments. You saw the San Jose game and the Galaxy were able to score right at the beginning of the second half because they played a ball over the top to Cabral, right? Did we see any of that in Colorado? Balls over the top being played in? We don't. And we haven't. And so if you're not going to play Cabral like that, I think it's it feels useless to sort of put him in there. So I certainly question just that. And I think he makes those runs. Watching him in the stadium and watching him make he's ready for that. There were a couple times Joveljic made some sort of in-behind runs that nobody saw. Cabral the same way. I would say that I had a really good view of this, Damian, except that the TV coverage was pretty atrocious whenever you get down to it. It's, again, not a Spectrum thing because that's a feed coming from Colorado, and Spectrum guys, the Spectrum guys are just like at the studio in El Segundo. But, it's one of those things where, you didn't get a lot of the sort of wide views to really see how everything was playing out. But, to me, this game highlights one of the biggest issues for the LA Galaxy, Damian, and that is the lack of depth. and the lack of pure talent, right? Who are the game changers? Are there any game changers on this roster right now that you are thinking, well, I hope he doesn't come into this game because, good Lord, he's going to change the game?
I mean, it would be Joveljic, but he's starting now.
And this is what happened last year as well, right? Chicha got hurt last year, and Joveljic had to start a whole bunch of games. Didn't necessarily do the best whenever he starts. I'm still the believer that whenever he's a single forward in those starting positions, he's not as dynamic as possibly he could be in some of the other ways, which is why I like him better coming off the bench. But having said that, there isn't that guy. Chicharito's not that guy right now. Yep. Douglas Costa... Christian Miles said something on the show, and I trust him. He says it's hard to call a guy a bust after 4 months and him not really playing all that much. And I sort of said, okay, I get that. So I'm sort of waiting, but I'm ready to press the button as soon as it is an appropriate amount of time. I'm ready to be like, it's a bust, and it gets to be a bigger bust though, Damian. Whenever you consider the Galaxy are paying him $3 million a year. Yeah. They got him basically for 2 years. It's 1.5 years with the 6-month loan. It's 2 years. Okay. So a 2-year contract, $3 million. And we just found out that Dybala went for 3 million euros basically. And those are almost the same right now, I think, to go to Roma. Yeah. This feels like, at $3 million that, you know, the Sesame Street song is one of these things doesn't belong here. One of these things is kind of the same, like that type of thing. It feels like if you could have Dybala for $3 million, or you have Douglas Costa for $3 million, that you would take Dybala for $3 million. I mean, hindsight, certainly, right? Hindsight, but there were also some serious red flags about Douglas Costa before he came in. So I don't know that you could be surprised to find out that the LA Galaxy, who had a struggling DP last year with Kevin Cabral, and there were hopes that he would snap out of it, and he hasn't. And now you have an MIA designated player in Douglas Costa, who's playing less than half the total available minutes so far this season. You have those two things. It doesn't surprise me that we look at this and say, oh, well, the LA Galaxy are struggling. Chicha's not playing that well, and you have two other DPs who rarely show up. Yeah. So, I mean, doesn't that if you're going to be in Major League Soccer, you sort of have to hit on your DPs if you really want. 2 out of the 3 have to be pretty good, right?
Yeah. You got to hit on your DPs, young DPs, regular age DPs, whatever. And it's just, I mean, you know, talking to Greg and talking to, you know, what they've seen out of Douglas when they had to shut him down there for a while and sort of build him back up. I guess he just had some horrible, terrible injuries to his body, his legs, and his feet, and I guess ankle injuries. And yeah, but man, it's tough because I mean these DPs, you need them to hit, and when they don't hit, that only just puts, you know, the coaching staff in the hot seat. And then when they don't deliver, you know.
Then they get fired, and then nothing happens in the front office of the people who made the suggestion to sign people, and then it just rinse and repeat over and over and over again. It's why firing Greg Vanney, which I don't think should happen anyway, but there's plenty of people who think that he should be fired. Mostly because the best reason I've heard so far is that he's lost the locker room, which is not even close to true. But lots of people like to say that. And so when you look at this, it's sort of, it sits there and goes, that doesn't change anything. So make the changes that change something. Make the changes that haven't changed, right? We're talking about the Chris Kleins and we're talking about the Jovan Karofskis. Make those changes, because bottom line is that Greg is getting suggestions on who they can sign, right? And those are coming from guys like Chris Klein and Jovan Karofsky and the scouting department that didn't exist, and barely exists on paper right now as we speak, right? Yeah, I mean, it's just... You and I've shared this with a bunch of people. You and I had about a 90-minute conversation with Greg Vanney. It was just you and me and Greg and Kevin from PR there. And I went over all the stuff that was on the record that we could talk about. And obviously I haven't talked about the stuff that's off the record. But it certainly feels like to me that Greg Vanney thinks that he's in charge of a lot more stuff than maybe predecessors have gotten a hold of, right? You're talking about academy stuff. You're talking about scouting and analytics. And, yeah, the analytics side, right? And all this stuff. And, he mentioned very succinctly that he was like, we have to catch up. We are behind teams like New York City and Atlanta United and Seattle and all these teams, all the major teams. He goes, we're behind them and we have to catch up. You can see that trying to play out. But the bottom line is that with the current structure of the front office, it feels like he's running in quicksand again.
Mm-hmm. yeah. I'm also under the impression that you don't fire him. I mean, because if you do, you're starting over again. I mean, who wants to do that, right?
Yeah.
At a certain point, you got to get, you got your staff in here now, sort of get things turned around after, you missed the playoffs, 3 out of the last 4 or 4 out of the last 5, I think, something like that. And if like he said, I mean, they're so far behind in all those areas where it's gonna take. Maybe it doesn't catch on until this off season when he finally gets the analytical staff in and everything in. Maybe it's not until his 3rd year where things really start to click. It seems like he's just really, like you're saying, he's in quicksand trying to catch up.
Yeah, he's playing from behind for a lot of this and that type of thing. Well, I mean, and the big deal here is that that Derrick Williams went on after this, and this was the big deal, and this is what everybody's sort of talking. And Nikki K from Spectrum, and who was my co-host on the show not too long ago, sort of asked Derrick about why the team was so disconnected, and Derrick seemed a little bit in shock. So I have that audio. I want to play it for you because I think there's a lot to talk about here as well.
We're not playing as a team. Where there's a lot of people playing as individuals. The manager gives us clear instructions, and there's times where people don't want to do that, and it's frustrating. I feel for the staff because they put so much work in, and then when it comes to the game, some people just have their own agendas, and it's frustrating. And we can't just keep going on like this because it's not good enough, and we want to be. We're sick of losing. It's just not good enough.
All right, there's Derrick Williams talking about it. Talking about individuals, right? People playing as individuals, and certainly this seems, at least from the outside, a lot of frustration from Derrick. First of all, he's, from what I can tell, and maybe you can sort of add to this, Damian, is that Derrick is a quiet leader for the most part. I don't see him yelling and screaming at people and the different things. Maybe a little bit on the field. Maybe he gets in that center back position a little bit. This team is very emotional. He's one of those emotional guys as well. So you can see that. But he's not one of these guys who's usually in the post game calling people out. But that was Derrick calling people out, sort of saying there's a lot of guys who are playing out there like they're individuals. And they're not listening to what our game plan is. And so everybody wants to talk about names and everything else. But what did whenever you heard Derrick sort of, go off in that way, was that a little surprising for you?
Not really, because you remember the San Jose press conference. He was still in his jersey, maybe 40 minutes after the game, I think. And he was still like down about, the goal that he took credit for allowing and how they played there. I see him as that leader on the back line, so I don't really. It's tough really to say. I wasn't there, so I'm not on the field. So maybe he has a better view of who's doing things out of that's not really in sync with with the staff and everything. So it's tough for me to say. Who's he talking about? But I think it's more frustration. Back-to-back losses against two teams that. You expected. I don't know why we expected, but thought that Galaxy would probably, handle San Jose and Colorado. So maybe it's more frustration than anything.
I think it is frustration. Here's the thing, though, is that I see people talking about, Vanney's lost the locker room. This is clear evidence of that, and that the locker room has a rift in it, and it's broken, and all those other things. I can do the only thing that I can do, which is talk to people after this, right? So I mean, there's lots of stuff we can sort of do whenever we're on a Zoom call. But we understand that you're going to get, some rather rainbow answers whenever that happens. That's fine. I expect it, and it's not a big problem. I asked Greg Vanney specifically. I said, do you feel like you're preparing this club the way that they're supposed to be? And he was like, yeah. He goes, I'm not perfect, obviously. He goes, I make mistakes. He goes, sometimes teams come out in sets that we're not expecting, right? They change things up. They change personnel. They do things a little bit different in order to throw a wrinkle in that. And he goes, and it's up to us to adjust and do all that stuff. He goes, but, for the most part, the answer was yes, and also if it's not, then we'll fix it and we'll make it there. So I didn't have any problems with that. It was a question you asked just because of what Derrick says, and sort of says, well, the manager's giving us the instructions and the whole deal. It's like, okay, so where's the breakdown? So I was able to talk to some players off the record, and just no names on any of this stuff, but the bottom line is that no, the locker room's not broken. I know lots of people would love to say that is. And I think a lot of ways it's like confirmation bias. The team is playing poorly. You want to know why Derrick Williams went out there? It's because they lost 3 games in a row.
Yeah.
The players I talked to were extremely frustrated. But it wasn't like, oh, frustrated, well, screw everybody and they're not doing their jobs and blah, blah, blah. It was, we need to be better. We know we can be better. We've seen how good we can play. He goes, and these players are like, we're so inconsistent. And I said, well, getting Delgado back is important and stuff like that. They're like, Mark's great. Mark is absolutely going to help us, and getting Chicha back is absolutely going to help us. But he goes, but that shouldn't matter. Like, it shouldn't matter. We're so inconsistent even without those guys. They're like, we just need to find a string of games where we're putting in the effort that we know that we can give and doing the things that we know we can do. We know we are a better team than what we're sort of showing. So I know everybody wants to say, that everything is broken in there. It's not. And we talked about this, I think, on, let's see, what was it? It was on last Wednesday night. Or actually, it was probably after the San Jose game. But looking at the San Jose game, Damian, which was sort of like, Almeida was well liked by all the players. They didn't want him to go, right? The whole deal. And so you don't have to lose the locker room in order to get fired, right? You can just keep losing games, even if the players like you, right? And I think that's the danger that Greg is in danger of doing. This is the first time in his Galaxy tenure that he's below 500, right? So he has 8 wins and 9 losses right now. And was it 3 draws? I think it's 3.
Yeah, 3 draws.
So when you look at that, this is the first time this team has slipped below that 500 mark. This is also a team that is sitting and teetering on the ever-living edge of the playoffs right now. For some, and this is indicative of the Western Conference as well, though, Damian. We have seen time and time again that the middling part, probably anybody from RSL who's in 3rd place all the way down to probably San Jose, who's in 13th right now, is that it's all clumped together there. There is nothing. Somebody says, "Oh, we're only 5 points from being in 13th place in the Western Conference." Yeah, you're also like not that many points away from being like in 4th or in 3rd, right? I mean, at 33 points, that's 6 points away for the LA Galaxy right now. They're sitting on that 7th. The bottom line is all of that. Whenever we look at the standings right now, basically anybody below Austin, because you have LAFC and Austin at 42 and 41 in the Western Conference. You have RSL at 33, Minnesota at 31, Nashville at 30, Dallas at 29, Galaxy at 27, Portland at 27, Seattle at 26, Vancouver at 26, Houston 25, Colorado 24, San Jose 22, and Kansas City at 20. This is how this is going to be, I think, for the rest of the year, which is it's just going to be clawing and grabbing for any points that you can, and that's going to end up being what the playoffs are.
I think it was Greg who said a couple of weeks, maybe it was a player, maybe it was Bond, I think, said they didn't want to go into that last game having to win it or whatever to get into the playoffs. And
it feels like that, doesn't it?
Where we're trending right now, it's trending that way again.
Who wants to have that decision day game against? Let's see, who is the last decision day game? It is against Houston. Of course, it's in Houston.
Right?
Yeah, it's in Houston. It's in Houston. That's a great game that you want to absolutely have to win on October 9th. So I mean, when you look at that, that's sort of where you sit on this now. We know that on Wednesday, the LA Galaxy are set to announce Gaston Brugman. He was in LA on Friday or Saturday. I think Saturday for sure. He was in LA on Saturday. Now, Greg has told us and told people, a whole bunch. Brugman's been like working out and like sending them videos of his workout. Like, this is not like a guy who has been hiding from this and he's been looking forward to coming for, a little over a year whenever it goes down. So I expect the integration in terms of getting him playing time and on the field is actually quick. I would not be surprised whenever you're looking at this game coming up on Sunday against Atlanta. I would not be surprised if Brugman starts. It's one of those. I think that he can give you 60 minutes type of thing. It feels like already. I have not seen him play. Please understand that's based on talking to Greg and talking to some of the people there, and they're sort of like, he's ready to go. But it does do a lot of things for the LA Galaxy just in terms of how they want to line up. One of the things it does is it moves Efrain Alvarez off a starting spot for the most part, as far as I can tell. And I think that's a positive right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I thought we'd get so much more out of him this year.
You thought this was the year?
I thought this was the year. I raised my hand. I'm sorry. I was the one. Maybe settle him into like a 30, 35 minute off the bench energizer or whatever, which is at this stage in his career, I don't think that's really what he wants to be. But
don't worry, the LA Galaxy still cover his under 21 Mexico games whenever he goes out to play there, instead of like playing for the national team or whatever they always tend to do. The bottom line is that I think him and Narajo right now, and Narajo's getting saddled with, I think, at least colored with a little bit of the same paint that Alvarez is, right? Which is just, you're not living up to your expectation. Now, Narajo for me has way more top end and way more success so far in his career, and I think has somewhat of a chance to still play in the World Cup. Again, 14 games left, and there's still a lot of time for him to sort of be an option for Mexico whenever they go into World Cup coming up in November. And so all those things being said, those two are under some serious fire right now. I mean, you have Efrain Alvarez, who's out there with bleached hair, who has been criticized heavily. I would say within the front office walls, at least certainly where you can talk. Greg talked a little bit about Efra finally coming to talk to him and finally having a discussion with him and finally being like, what do I need to do to get better? And, it was sort of one of those, hey, thanks for showing up, like type of things, right? Greg's going to say nice things about it. But at the same time, you could tell that been waiting for Efrain Alvarez to make a step forward and take that step on his own for a long time. To me, it feels like it's too late. And so I don't know how you go about. There's a whole bunch of things that people are obviously looking at. One is the U22 situation with a young DP situation and how you get out of a Cabral contract that was, at least by some reports that people I've been talking to, 100% a Greg Vanney signing. Let's get that out of the way, right? Greg Vanney saw him. Greg Vanney wanted him. Greg Vanney brought him in. Okay. That's how Kevin Cabral became a player for the LA Galaxy. But at least by some accounts, I can say that it wasn't the intention. And I think people remember back where we heard about Kevin Cabral and we're like, oh, this is probably a U22 signing, right? This might be one of those that makes some sense. Like, oh, this is going to be a U22. And he came in as a young designated player as well. It seems that during the negotiations, both the salary, the transfer fee, and the terms of the contract in terms of its length all ballooned. And that seems to be a trend that happens with LA Galaxy players. Whether you look at Grandsir or you look at Raveloson or Koulibaly or possibly even Mark Delgado in terms of how much money they're paying him, there seems to be an inflationary tax that mostly the LA Galaxy are paying in spite of themselves. And so how do you go about that with Efrain Alvarez, with Julian Narajo, with Joveljic, right? Dejan Joveljic, all U22 players and all linked at least in spot to the young designated player spot of Kevin Cabral. And how can the LA Galaxy free up space in order to get another DP? Because right now it feels like hands are tied. There's no DP, again, there's no way to sign Dybala. If there was, the LA Galaxy probably could have, but they didn't do it.
Yeah, I remember the good old days when the roster rules were written in pencil.
Right. There's no Chivas USA next door to offload Juan Pablo Angel, right? Like it's one of those. And people keep saying, "Oh, well, the Galaxy should just buy these guys out." There's no mechanism midway through the season to buy somebody out. You have to transfer somebody. Yeah. And so people are saying, well, Douglas Costa could go play at Hammarby. And it's like, well, does Douglas Costa want to go play at Hammarby? Because, again, that's a big part of this. Like, somebody said, oh, well, they should just agree to mutually terminate the contract. And I'm like, if I'm Douglas Costa, why would I be terminating a contract that pays me $3 million, right?
Yeah, that's... I remember when Greg said, he was looking for two additional players. And I asked him, do you think you need three? And he's like... the way the roster, the salary cap is, they just don't have the money for a third edition, and I don't know.
It's easy to sort of talk about this as like the Galaxy's hands are tied, Damian, but they got tied by themselves. It's not like they can sit here and like point at other people and be like, oh, well, how did we get in this situation again for another time? Right? I mean, the Galaxy got into a situation, obviously, with Giovanni Dos Santos that they ended up buying out, right? Somebody reminded me, because I was trying to remember back to 2017. I was like, did Jonathan Dos Santos even play for Kurt Onalfo? Because the way... He didn't, by the way. It didn't happen. They fired Onalfo and announced basically Jonathan Dos Santos the next day, like that type of thing. So he never got him. But talking to people afterwards, Onalfo was basically like, give me anybody. Give me anybody at this point. You guys gave me a roster that's all full of young guys. Give me anybody. And that's where I sort of get flashbacks to that in terms of what's going on right now, because we know about Brugman. We know he's being brought in. We know he's a TAM player. We suspect, and certainly from our conversations with Greg Damian, we can say that Greg was optimistic of bringing in a second person. Now, I don't know if that optimism has faded since we last talked to him. It's been a couple weeks. So it very well could be like, oh, that's not going to happen now. But the other part of that is that I feel like the LA Galaxy are in so much of a problem right now, where they don't have the roster and they don't have the talent to be able to go out there and consistently compete, that they're going to make another panic buy, right? And it's like, if you do that and you get it wrong, you hamstring yourself even further going through next season, right? Because as you're looking at turnover and everything, there should be a designated player spot open whenever Chicharito doesn't get renewed. And I don't think, at least at this point, that I would consider that. So I think that they have a DP spot open there. But if there's nothing else to do, if there's nobody else to get, right? If you have people locked up, and we know that there are several long-term contracts throughout this entire LA Galaxy roster, there'll be some turnover. But at the spots that it counts for right now, Damian, it doesn't feel like there's going to be a bunch of turnover in spots where you could get it. Victor Vasquez, Sasha Kleshtin, you could look at that. Maybe you sell Ryan and Alvarez. There's ways to create this stuff, but it doesn't feel like the LA Galaxy are in a position to be thinking that far forward, and that worries me. I think panic buy coming here this summer. The second signing is going to be a panic buy.
Oh, I love a good panic buy.
hey, that's whenever you can get Chris Klein to go out there and say, don't worry, we can sell these guys. We can sell Jonathan Dos Santos. We can sell Giovanni Dos Santos. They ended up buying out Giovanni Dos Santos, but I'm sure they could sell him somewhere. So again, you get into this, and this is where it comes through in Colorado, is that you have a team that is very much, and I think correctly called out by Derrick Williams, as playing as individuals, right? I think you have some guys who think that they belong in Europe already, or that they've played in Europe for 20 years, and that they're just that are coasting a little bit. And I don't think that Greg Vanney has the players to punish the guys who he wants to punish, because I think that in most cases you're going to start somebody like Kevin Cabral, because there's probably not a better option out there right now. And the best thing you can hope for is all of a sudden Kevin Cabral snaps out of it. I don't know why we would think that now, but right. I mean, where do you stand on Kevin Cabral though? I mean, we've gone through this for now a year and a half.
Yeah. Last year I sort of gave him the benefit of the doubt, young kid coming over here, new country, new league, everything's new. Coming into the preseason, we saw how what was it, like 3 or 4 goals in the preseason? You're thinking, okay, it's going to click this year. But now it's like, oh my goodness, you see him in these spots where it's like, I think Greg said he's not, his confidence is down. He's thinking too much, really. He gets on the ball and you're expecting either him to shank it wide or a defender to come and slide it off his foot and send the ball the other way, which has happened like 3 times maybe the last 2 games.
Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, I joked with someone the other day, maybe they got the wrong Cabral on the first team. Something maybe they got to look at. I don't know.
Maybe they have to switch with Remy.
Remy has 3 goals, right? Or maybe 3 or 4 goals to you too. But it just, man, its confidence is. You could tell his confidence is really down.
But it gets that to go over and over again whenever you sort of look at this. It's like, yeah, we can say the confidence is down, but like, has he really ever showed that confidence? I mean, maybe preseason. Here's the thing. I have been told rather reliably that Cabral balls out in practice. He's not a guy who sucks during practice.
I've seen some of those practice sessions toward the end when they're when they're running their offensive little, not really set pieces, but sort of offensive attack there.
Right. And
you can see he's finishing stuff with just like, holy smoke, where is that at in the game? Now I don't see the 11-on-11 stuff because we're always kicked out before when they're doing that. But some of the stuff after the 11-on-11, you can see his finishing is just like, wow, that's what they saw. Yeah. And I don't know why it ends up on a training field and doesn't go into the main stadium, which is. It's confusing to me.
It is, and I want to I want to be the guy who's going to like hang in there with him and be like, he's going to be okay. It's going to happen. Like, it's going to click. Something's going to happen. He's going to mature. He's going to get struck by lightning. Something is going to change. He's going to get bit by a radioactive spider. I'm not sure what it is, but something should change that makes him, a decent provider. And Greg even had to say it in Colorado after the Colorado game as well. He was like, he gets himself in so many good positions. He goes, but like he was saying, he can't get caught by somebody. He's too fast to get caught by these guys, and he gets caught by these guys. I said on Twitter, and I'll say it again, I know everybody was on him for getting caught from behind on that one, on the one play, and certainly he was in the box, and he's getting ready to take a shot, and he's rounding and sort of moving his body into position, and the player comes in and gets it. I don't know that he slows up as much as everybody thinks he slows up. To me, he's just adjusting for the ball. But at the same time, where was the speed at the beginning of that to provide the extra separation whenever it happens? So I get it. I know what people are saying. I understand, and I get the frustration because we're in the press box all the time, Damian. We're like, nah, he's not going to make that. Like, as soon as, you see him go on a break, you're like, nothing's going to happen. Nope, it's not going to happen at all.
Second year, he still hasn't scored a league goal. I mean, what do you going into next year? I mean,
he's regressed from last year, right?
I think he has. Yeah.
That's nuts. That shouldn't happen. And the bottom line is that even though I think you have to color him with a young designated player tag, I think you have to be honest about what a young DP is, because there are not very many successful young DPs in Major League Soccer, and this is just more evidence of why. I also think that knowing that he takes up a third designated player spot, and I think if one of the things the Galaxy could do, Damian, is go in and clean out the U22s that they have, keep one, and you could be Joveljic, right? You could even, by the way, there's some thoughts in my mind where I'm like, okay, so you move Cabral, you sell him wherever you need to sell him, and you get him gone, and he's gone, and then maybe you go to Joveljic and make him the young designated player, and now you can keep all your U22s or sign another U22. Or the other side of that is you already have Joveljic on a pretty good contract in terms of what you're paying for him and how he hits the salary cap. Then you go out and you move Efrain Alvarez, which gets rid of one of your U22 spots. You sell Julian Narajo, which gets rid of another U22 spot. You let Joveljic take that U22 spot, or you convert Araujo into just a normal spot, which you're paying him a lot of money now, so might even be a TAM player. Right on that line, and then you go out and you get a third senior designated player, and you don't worry about the U22s, and you get the best designated players that you can. And if you do something like that in the offseason, and again, this is only the offseason, there's no saving the LA Galaxy for the second half of this. They have their DPs, unless they find somebody who's like, we absolutely have to have twins, and we need Kevin Cabral and Remy Cabral. Unless you do that and find a place to move them, you're stuck with these guys. So that means that for here on out, for the next 14 games, because there's 14 games remaining now, 20 games through, 14 games remaining, 34 total games, the LA Galaxy have to figure out a way to make this lineup, which certainly lacks in creativity a lot, lacks in finishing a lot, and recently, again, has lacked in defensive sort of stoutness, which is a little bit of a surprise just in terms of how they started. They're going to have to make this work. And so this is about putting the puzzle together in the best possible way coming forward here. And I'm not sure that I have the answer for that at all. Do you, are there 11 good players? Do you compromise in some positions automatically, Damian, just by trying to get 11 players on the field?
Yeah. You're like, okay, this guy has to be there. And it's like, well, me personally, I mean, I would throw on Johnny Perez, Cameron Dunbar. I mean, hey, your more experienced guys aren't doing anything any better. I mean, just if you get into one of these three games and 7-8 day stretches again, run these guys out. I mean, Dunbar was USL Player of the Week. I'm not Player of the Week. Team of the Week the last 2 of the last 3 weeks. Right. Preston Judd, Johnny Perez, throw them out there. Jalen Neal. We've always been waiting for Jalen Neal to.
Marcus Fernandez. I mean, it's the U21 guys, right, that have sort of been showing stuff, and Cameron Dunbar as well. I agree that I think that there's room for that, and I think at least whenever we talked to Greg, he seemed to indicate that time was coming because he knew that they were going to be pinched under a tremendous amount of games coming through July and August and everything else, right?
I thought, but I didn't really see those guys in July. I mean, now July is down to 2 games in 2 weeks. So it's to a regular practice schedule now. So it's great.
Yeah, it feels that way. By the way, July was 6 games, was the first month with 6 games in it. The Galaxy, Damian, here's a fun stat. The Galaxy have never lost in their first game of the month. Never lost in the first game of the month. In fact, they've only drawn once. They've won in February, March, April, May, and July, and they drew in June. Remember, they only had 2 games in June. So there's your fun one. Now, everything in between has been more of a disaster. But usually they win the first one. So that August game, the first game in August, which I don't know if we count the one. I'm not counting it on here. The SoFi Stadium one.
Can't count that one.
And so that's not it. But that first game in August, I mean, August, September, and October, I think you can chalk up three not losses there. As far as the stats are sort of looking at how it goes. But here's the thing that it was funny because I was talking to some players, Damian, and it was sort of like, they're like, we just need to get consistent. And when we look at this team and what they have done, they have not won more than 2 games in a row in 2 years since Greg Vanney took over, right? So I do longest single season win streaks per year, right? So in 2020, when they were horrible, they won 4 games in a row. All right. 2020, 4 games in a row. They also had a really long losing streak in there. I'll have to see if I have the chart for that one as well. But in 21, the most they ever won was 2 games in a row. In 2022, the most they ever won was 2 games in a row so far. So this doesn't feel like a team, Damian, that can just sort of just route off a whole bunch of wins and be like, oh, okay. Because quite honestly, if the Galaxy would go on a 5-game win streak, right, they'd probably put themselves in a position to easily qualify for the playoffs, right? I mean, At that point, you're like, okay, that's 15 points that they're adding on to there. You're getting in a pretty good position to qualify. So 5 wins in a row or 4 wins in a row and some draws, an unbeaten streak of 7 or 8 really does. Yeah, I say that and you laugh and you should laugh because this Galaxy team has shown no ability to do that, not under Greg Vanney.
No, and what game was it where I forgot which game it was. Kelvin Leardown walked off the podium. He said, all we need to do is get on one of those, 5 or 6 game stretches. Yeah. And it's like a month ago, really. And here they are still looking for anything.
And again, three losses in a row now, which is their season high in terms of losses in a row. So this is not a team that I feel super confident in terms of winning all that stuff. If we go, I always like to just sort of compare, just so you can keep an eye on things and be like, okay, in your mind, does this make any sense? The LA Galaxy compared to all the other MLS Cup winning Galaxy sides right now are just barely hanging into what I call the cone of uncertainty for the LA Galaxy, right? So there's like this cone that starts to get steeper and steeper about this point, where if the Galaxy sort of stay in those steeps, and there's a lot of teams winning a lot of games for the LA Galaxy in this last third of the season, right? And right now, when we look at that, we're saying they're just barely hanging on to any sort of idea that at least comparing them to other MLS Cup years that they would be successful. If we look at it in terms of every LA Galaxy season, the Galaxy are right smack dab in the middle of everything. Maybe a little bit below the middle line, but very much a average to slightly below average team whenever you compare it to the LA Galaxy. And at this point last year, Damian, the LA Galaxy had 35 points through 20 games.
Wow.
They have 27 points right now. And so you're looking at an 8-point difference. If I do my math correctly, an 8-point difference right now, just in terms of where they were 8 points better in 2020 at this point right now. Now, here's the rub on that. And certainly if you compare that directly across, you can say, well, I mean, there's no way they're making the playoffs because that 35-point team didn't make the playoffs. The problem with that 35-point team is that they tanked and didn't win. They had like a 9-game winless streak, right? And so the Galaxy need to avoid that at all costs. I mean, this is obvious analysis for 100, Alex, but they need to avoid that. And if they can just find any sort of consistency, and I'm talking about winning, in 6 games you win 3 and you draw 3 type of thing, right? Where you're not losing, maybe you lose 1 in there, maybe you win an extra game, those types of things. You don't have to win a whole bunch of games in a row, but you have to consistently be picking up points from here on out. And there's nothing in the way the LA Galaxy are playing right now that tells me that they are in the right mindset to do that. And you have Atlanta coming in, who is, Atlanta's almost as much of an enigma right now as the LA Galaxy are, right? And so, everybody's like, oh, they turned a corner. It's definitely going to happen. And then it's like, oh, maybe not. Maybe they didn't turn a corner. The whole deal. I remember Damian asking Sasha a question, and I think I asked Greg this too. I said, are the next couple games like really important for you guys? Do you think it makes or breaks your season, right? And they were like, no, because, there's plenty of games left. And, however we sort of get through that, we'll see how it is and the whole deal. I understand the answer, but it seems to me that those last 3-4 games, where in one of those games they beat Montreal 4-0, but in those games that it is important for the mental health of this team. And right now, I believe that 90% of the problems the Galaxy have are on the mental side of this because, again, we've seen them play well.
Yeah, and Greg has always pointed to the mental side of how they start these games at home, and how that's sort of, he's been trying to figure out why they start games like they do at home. It's always tough to get a player or coach in MLS to say, hey, this is must win, this is must win, this is must win. But at a certain point, man, 14 games left, you're barely hanging on. Something got to be something. Must something. Sunday has to be a must something kind of game, really. Yeah. If that's effort, draw, point, 3 points. Something has to happen on Sunday because the standings are so tight. There's no leeway. You lost all leeway, really, the way things have gone. So it's like it's going to be a battle from here on
out. If we figure, let's put the sort of the line at the playoffs at right around 50 points. It's probably 48, 50. Right? Yeah, I know. I'm just saying. But if we sort of go with what it was, I know now all of a sudden you start doing the math. You're like, no, that's not going to work. But right around 50, it's 50, 48, 47, right in there. Okay, 47 to 50 is your playoff line. That's going to be your 7th spot, somewhere in there. And so if we do 50, that's 23 points the LA Galaxy have to come up with out of 14 games. That's a lot, Damian.
That is a lot.
Over 1.5 points per game. There are more wins on that than there are draws. And that's where this becomes difficult is, again, just by the way they've been playing the last 3 games, I'm not sure you have any confidence whatsoever that they can average 1.64 points per game over the last 14 games. And again, I think Brugman is going to help. I think Brugman helps because he's going to relieve some of the defensive pressure from Delgado and relieve some of the pressure from Raveloson. I think that's okay. I think Raveloson getting forward more, regardless of the outcomes of the games recently, has been a huge boon to the LA Galaxy. He's making late runs. He's being in positions that he hasn't been, and he's being goal dangerous.
Yeah.
And the Galaxy haven't had that. Outside of Joveljic, especially recently, who else has been goal dangerous? Grant Shear got one against LAFC. Okay, big deal. Raveloson has been the other guy. He's been the guy who's looked dangerous. Derrick Williams, quite honestly, should have a goal by now as well because he's had a couple headers that have been, saved off the line. So he's sort of there. But who's goal dangerous? And so if you can get Delgado a little farther forward, I'm hoping that he can also be somewhat goal dangerous. He doesn't have to score, but I'd like to see him produce from that spot. And if he can, whether it's Raveloson, Joveljic, Chicharito, those types of things, I think that helps. The other thing, and I've already said it, is that it gets Efrain Alvarez off the field. It gets Victor Vasquez off the field. It allows those guys to come in the second half and be a change of pace or a change of direction or just a change in personnel where they play differently than how the LA Galaxy are lined up. I think defense is the most important part of these next couple games because if we go back now and we look at the LA Galaxy, Damian, and I said it in my post game whenever I was talking to the guys, the Galaxy have now given up the first goal in their last 9 of 12 games. They've given up the first goal 9 out of their last 12 games. And you can imagine there's a win in there, right? Austin is the one win that they got, right? But they're 1-8-1 whenever they give up the first goal. Right, they're 7-1-1 when they score the first goal, and they haven't scored the first goal basically since they trounced Montreal. But even before that, you'd have to go back to Minnesota, where they ended up drawing back on May 18th. Was the next time they scored the first goal. So you go into this saying that the Galaxy are so important, and I was talking to Taylor Twellman about this a little bit, and I said, it's so important for the Galaxy to score the first goal. I go, why do you think it is? And I think he's right. They can't dictate the game. The Galaxy can't dictate a game, right? They can hold possession, right? They can pass the ball around, but they can't impose themselves on other teams unless they score the first goal and then play sort of that counterattacking style. All right. So this is a serious issue for the LA Galaxy. I mean, I'm generally pretty optimistic. I still think they have a very good chance just because of how muddied the center of the Western Conference is, Damian, that the Galaxy have a good chance at still making the playoffs. And maybe they make it at like 45 points, right? Maybe everything swivels down to that and the whole deal. But the bottom line is they're on the line.
Yeah.
And maybe they should be below the line whenever you look at some of the teams that are starting to make, some real presses. Portland is one of those teams that's starting to sort of get that going. And Tito in our chat room rightfully points out, this might be a good thing though. 14 games remaining, 8 road games, 6 home games. Does that help the LA Galaxy?
I don't. But you're talking about the standings. I mean, Seattle, they're going to make a late run here. Houston's brought in Hector Herrera. Kansas City has some signings coming in. So, I mean, that bottom half is good. It's going to be, in some new talent is going to be added into these teams here, which is only going to make things that much difficult, trying to secure these last couple of playoff spots.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to sort of track this down as it all goes. The schedule for the LA Galaxy comes up. Atlanta coming up on July 24th, day after my birthday, just in case everybody was paying attention. July 30th to close out July. It's at Dallas. That won't be an easy game. We'll have the Hammer there in person though, at least watching that game. Then the LA Galaxy go into their August matches, which includes the friendly against Chivas at SoFi Stadium. I'm sure that's what they want to do. They go to Kansas City, who is generally one of the worst teams in Major League Soccer right now. Which means absolutely nothing. The Galaxy don't normally win in Kansas City, so I wouldn't expect that you're going to see anything major out of that. You're home to Vancouver. Vancouver is a team that is sneaky in terms of getting results. I never really know what to expect from them, and so I would be worried about that game. That's August 13th, August 19th. The LA Galaxy hosts Seattle Sounders. No idea. I have no idea whether Seattle may have, and I was sort of listening to Counterattack today on Sirius XM FC or Sirius FC XM, however they do it, I can't remember. And they were, I think Andrew Wiebe was there, and he's like, maybe Seattle expended too much energy in the CCL. Maybe it took too much out of them. Maybe they can't come back, and they've had some injuries and some other things too, right? Maybe they're not going to be that. But that being said, they've owned the LA Galaxy in recent years, so I wouldn't expect that. You go away to Bruce, that's who you want to play. You play Bruce in New England at the end of August, and then the very end of August, August 31st, you get to play Bob Bradley and the 1,700 Italians that they've imported since the signing window comes in. So I would expect that Toronto is a much different team than what you have seen as well. So, I mean, that's what's coming up very, very quickly for the LA Galaxy, and there are not any easy games in here, mostly because, as I've said this before, Damian, when you're not a good team, you tend to not have easy games.
No, there's no easy here. I mean, there's nothing here that say, hey, you can circle that game as, oh yeah, they're going to win that one for sure.
Yeah. Name one. If you had to bet your house on any of these games, are you betting it that the Galaxy beat Atlanta? I don't.
No.
Dallas, if you have to pick one game, I'm trying to think one game here through the end of the season. There's 14 games remaining, Damian. Is there one that you are confident the LA Galaxy are winning?
San Jose, nah.
No, away at San Jose.
That's away, yeah.
And it's during an international break.
Oh.
Yeah.
There's nothing here that says Chivas, maybe.
Yeah, that's the one. It's the one that doesn't count.
Yeah. They're in for a battle, a fight, and we'll see what happens when the dust is settled and at the end of the year, if they're in the playoffs or not.
Yeah, I would say the only thing I would add to that is that with all the games and with the schedule congestion, you're going to get some surprising results. There's absolutely 100%. I guarantee it. So I almost think that whenever you look at July and how busy it was, and then you go into August with how busy it was and how busy it is for everyone, that you're going to see, Damian, in my mind, there's a little bit of me that says the results that you see right now may end up still staying sort of the same. We already saw it in July where the Galaxy have lost 3 games in a row and dropped like one spot in the Western Conference. Yeah. Right? Now, I don't expect that happens all the time, but I think that is an indication that there are not too many really good teams. Similar to last year, there was a lot of just muddying things up in the middle. And so that very well could be another one to sort of look at. I'm just trying to think if there's any other stats that I want to do. The XG in this game, this was a game the Galaxy got outplayed. They may have had 18 shots, but with 8 of those being Efrain Alvarez hitting it right at a goalkeeper, and Kevin Cabral scuffing them into their path. I'm not sure that there was any sort of danger, and the XG sort of shows that the Galaxy probably should have had a goal, but that Colorado's 1.6 expected goals, which is crazy. Do you know how low percentage the shots have to be, Damian, for you to have 18 shots and it just equal 1 on XG? Divide 1 by 18 and you'll get the average of what their percentage was in that, right? So, well into the probably 2%, 3% in terms of maybe the average, 5%. 5% in terms of the average. It's not good. And one of the best chances the LA Galaxy had came off Derrick Williams, I think a header, which was like a 13%. So now take 13% away from the one, and then everybody else with 17 other shots sort of fills in that one. So the shot selection hasn't been good. The offense has not been good.
It's like, especially when we've always talked about how they sort of, when teams are in that low block and how they're trying to break them down, and they can't really break them down, and they're just passing the ball aimlessly around, and it leads to nothing, and the ball hits the other way. It's puzzling, really.
It is, and I'll say this, that as much as we've talked about the low block and sort of difficult to break down, Colorado came out to play, and the Galaxy could have and usually do play better against teams that come out to play. Atlanta. Just sort of looking a little bit ahead to coming up on Sunday. And by the way, the Galaxy and Atlanta played the last game of the weekend, so everybody else will have played. So you'll know exactly sort of where the LA Galaxy are and where the standings are whenever they go to kick off on this game. July 24th, 6:30 p.m., a 6:55 p.m. kickoff time. Just keep that in mind. Yeah. So 25-minute lead-in by FS1 and Fox Deportes there. By the way, $2 super chat from What The? And they say, what would happen if we go 0-14 to end the season? I would imagine nobody would have any more jobs. That's
I would think everybody would be.
They would fire you and me, Damian. We'd be fired too. We'd have to go somewhere. Yeah. As Patrick says in the chat room right below it, draft pick, baby. You just got to go for those. That's why it's tanking. You're tanking to get the draft picks now.
I don't trust the Galaxy with draft picks anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff to that as well. Mr. Provino goes, well, that would be a wooden spoon. I'm not keeping the wooden spoon this time. I'm just letting everybody know. All right? I had it last time. I'm not keeping it this time. So you can't do it. I'm going to end this, and I'll be a little more positive just in the way I end it. I do not believe the LA Galaxy are as bad as they have been playing the last 3 games. I've seen them play very well. That being said, they need a consistent lineup, and they need consistent performers, and I'm hopeful that Brugman does some of that. To sort of help them do that. I hope that Delgado can stay healthy. I hope that Chicharito scores some goals and sort of can contribute to what Joveljic is doing as well. So if you add those together, I think the LA Galaxy are definitely capable of winning, let's see, 7 games out of the 14. And I know that sounds crazy, but quite honestly, if they underperformed last year during this same stretch, where they played well and they didn't get results. Well, they haven't played well really in the last 3 games. And they haven't been getting the results. But when they do play well, they do get results. And it's just sort of one of those things where it's like, okay, so, prove to me that you're good enough. I'm not sure that they can. But I'm also not... If they had never beat anybody like they did against LAFC in the U.S. Open Cup, Damian, I would not believe this team is capable of doing things like that. If they didn't beat LAFC the first time, if they didn't beat Austin twice, I would not believe they're capable of doing it, but I've seen them do it. They didn't blow Montreal out of the water, in a dominant performance. All these things that again, there's a lot of evidence to tell you that this LA Galaxy team is better than what they've been doing. There's also a lot of evidence that tells you that they are mediocre and probably exactly where they should be. And maybe they're worse. Maybe they're worse than where they're at right now. So I think that if you're looking for a definite, and I don't like to sit on the fence, but I can't figure this team out. They have some players who can play. 100% they have some players that can play. And so I'm just like, all right, so show it. This is it, right? I mean, this is you either show it or you don't, and lots of guys are going to, go home early again.
Yeah. I mean, Javier said it several times that, he scored those goals last year, and what happened? You know, he sat home and watched the playoffs on TV. I don't know if he really watched it on TV, but
I bet he did. I bet he seems like the kind of guy. Maybe he was like streaming while he was doing it though. It was in the background. He wasn't like focused on it. It was just in the background. Kind of how like I watch some games.
Yeah, they're trending in that direction again. And you talk about, you know, Brugman and all that, but you're going to need your DPs to do something, anything. Costa, Cabral, I mean, that's always a big, you know, that's so much attention because they are, you know, they have the two designated player spots, and they're going to need to contribute something if the Galaxy are going to get things turned around here.
Yeah, well, we'll certainly see. Galaxy scheduled for a media availability on Wednesday. Again, Brugman is supposed to be introduced to everybody there. I'm going to try to make it. We'll see if I can get out there. And so we'll see if perhaps this is sort of the change that the Galaxy need. Obviously, a full week of training as well, getting some guys healthy, getting some guys back from protocols with Delgado and Chicharito, who Vanney said he expects back for this week as well. And then going up against an Atlanta team that is very much Jekyll and Hyde as well. So, I mean, I don't know. It is worth noting before we get into like really talking about Atlanta on the Thursday show is that the Galaxy have played Atlanta 3 times and lost 3 times. So more of the Colorado winless streaks and all those little things that are sort of happening. So we'll see how that goes. All right. LA Galaxy playing against Atlanta coming up on Sunday, July 24th, 6:30 p.m., 6:55 p.m. kickoff time. FS1 and Fox Deportes is where you can find that. And so hopefully we'll see everybody out there at the stadium on Sunday. Damian, is there anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
No, wait, whatever you pay Kevin.
Yeah.
Send it my way.
Yeah, double. I'll double it. You did it. You did it.
Wherever he is.
That's good. I like that. Why don't you tell people where they can find you on Twitter and where they can reach you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Damian Calhoun, and also in the SoCal News Group, LA Daily News, Orange County Register, Riverside Press Enterprise, Long Beach Press Telegram, what else? Daily Breeze. I'm all over the place.
You are all over the place. Doing prep stuff, all sorts of stuff. Well, Damian, we certainly appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much, buddy. We'll have you back on, I promise. It won't be so long this time. So, all right, there's Damian Calhoun. If you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at JGuesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast. Head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com for all of the writing, all the podcasts, all the stuff. Glad that you could join us for this Monday show. Show coming up on Thursday night, getting you ready for the Atlanta game coming up on Sunday. All right, for Mr. Damian Calhoun filling in for the Panda, I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening. You've been watching Corner of the Galaxy from the box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Narajo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.